If you was ever interested in getting into data analytics space and you just have been overwhelmed by all of the options that's available, well, I've made this video based off of my experience. One, the path that I took to get where I am as obtaining that 100K plus data analytics role, but also if I was to really redo it over, I also have a path that I feel that people should take just to have more of a cleaner transition than I did to basically get to that point. To introduce myself, my name is Yusuf Britton. I am a lead data analyst at Evernorth, which is one of the many companies owned by Cigna. And I guess what really made me want to make this video for you and anyone else that's interested in this space is that going to my old college, my old stomping grounds, a lot of students, a lot of people have reached out to me through LinkedIn, through emails, through calling me, or I guess just networking events in general on how one can be able to basically be a data analyst or just understand data science, see what the path they should take. And I guess this would be my own personal record of doing that. Let's talk about my journey. So I wasn't always a data analyst. I was actually an accountant for about 7 years. And when I was first introduced to programming, programming-esque, I guess, would be that we just had these really big Excel files that came over. So I used to work for a PBM, in which we would acquire other smaller companies so it could be able to service their members. And one of the companies that we had these humongous Excel files that could not be read from anywhere. And but we did know that one, we had to get this information, and ultimately we had to try and transfer this over into some type of database. And at the time, it was tasked for our IT department, but there's been other priorities. So us being in accounting, the accounting department, which is a cost center, some of our stuff probably wouldn't funnel up to the top as far as priorities are concerned. But I still was interested in trying to solve this business need. And through doing some research, I found something called Python. And I was able to learn this pandas library, which is basically like the super version of Excel, in which I was able to complete that test. I was able to get the data over, I was able to view the data, I was able to insert it into a database. And you would think just off of that would have been the indicator that's all right, I should go straight into data science, because if I had done any research, that ultimately would have been the path that I took. But instead, upon doing this and being interested in programming, I chose to try and make games, which, in retrospect, was probably a bit of a overtaking, whatever the word is, I can't speak right now, of trying to enter the programming space. And of course, I tried to learn one of the hardest languages, which is C sharp, C sharp. That is the word. And that was kind of brutal because I didn't know anything about object inheritance, which is, again, even if you don't know what it is, it's really just trying to make something and call from it copies of it. And it was just rough, I could not understand it. So upon failing at that, watching the YouTube channel, trying to go through all the different videos where you have people from other countries trying to explain this, I was just threw my hands up. And I still was interested, so I chose to go with something easier. After doing some research, I chose to go into web development. So that was easier because, we use web pages all over the place, and it's kind of a good mid entry level thing to get into if you're interested in this space. So I actually learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which, just to give a very, very short primer into this, HTML is just the words that you would see on a page. CSS would be the colors that you would see there, in the background for whatever, individual buttons, whatever you see. And then JavaScript is any type of user interaction that you have, whether it be clicking a button or submitting a form. That's essentially what would go through, and it would be processed. We'd do something with that information. And I think at that time, forgot to give timelines. This is 2018 to 2019. This is like my journey, right? After learning that, I then chose to learn PHP, which in retrospect, I still think it was good, because a good thing is everything that I've learned has kind of built into my data analyst career. Even me being an accountant, like me understanding numbers and telling a story with it, I do feel that all of it like helped out in my journey into this space. So even if even if it's something similar lines, or even if you've done something else, I still feel like it's very, very important to take those skills and just transfer it over into the space. So saying all that to say, learn PHP. It was great because I got to like understand like back end programming and how like you could be able to get this information and manipulate it into other spaces, which definitely was not something that I learned just with vanilla JavaScript at the time. And it actually made it easier for me when I went back into Python to understand like how to use Django. And of course, in doing so, using these backend languages, I also learned SQL. Learning all that, I kind of had like a good sense between like some of the Python work that I was doing at my accounting company, whereas like I was also teaching myself stuff. I felt comfortable to the point where it's like, all right, let me see if I can do something outside of this. So, leading up to March 2019, I started dabbling a little bit into programming. At this point, I was probably only making like $500 a month, give or take. And I was just tutoring CS students in different aspects of programming. And it was good because it gave me like an education into the space of programming that was able to expand my knowledge base while also, getting some money from it. And, between doing that and kind of building up that experience, I was able to, through a colleague, I was telling a colleague about some of the work that I've been doing with some of these college students. They said that, hey, he has a cousin of his, might need some help with like an entertainment company as far as like working with their tech team, kind of just like having a middle person there. Because I guess the issue that they had is that one, there was just like a time difference between both places, but ultimately the entertainment company just didn't have like the technical background to understand like using data between their different services and how to push it into different services, as far as like having their videos available on like Roku, Netflix, all these other different streaming platforms. And at that point I was dabbling a little bit into using a service that would use another service, which is called an API. Essentially, we were able to connect their services that was from their team from, an outside place. We stream their platforms to other locations. It was able to get some of the analytics there as well. So that being like a really good like first thing into it. I know like I was originally probably making like $1,000 from there, but between the work that I was doing there and the work I was doing with the CS students, I was able to ramp up my portfolio a bit more. So I was able to go for like more lucrative roles like on like freelancing websites such as Upwork, to the point that by the end of like July of 2020, so from March 2019 to July 2020, I went from like making maybe like the 1,500 from the beginning between consulting and tutoring up to like around like $7,000 a month. I mean, again, took a lot of work. I was doing a bunch of different things, but I was able to start to have like a specialty towards manipulating data using Python. And then I also, while also supplementing my learning, I would meet with other colleagues at different like meetup groups that was geared towards, at first I went for Django development, but then there was another set of people that was there that was data scientists. And I knew of it a little bit. I just didn't know, about like, making like ML models or like predictive models and stuff. But there was like a subsection in there that like really piqued my interest, which was data analytics. Because I didn't even know it at the time, but that's essentially what I've been doing with these companies as far as getting their data down from different places, transforming it and putting it into a database or any other like reporting tool. So at that point, it's like, let me do some research. Maybe I should go to a coding bootcamp. Maybe I can go to school for this. And just looking at all those options, a lot of them didn't seem like sustainable with what I was doing. Like I didn't want to be like out of work for an extended period of time. I was freelancing. So to me, it's like, what I ultimately went with a data analytics program with Udacity. It had some really good reviews. I was looking at some of the coursework and it looked really good. And more importantly, it was starting to use like other softwares, BI software that I was interested in, which is Tableau. And at the time, they also had an R language in there, which I haven't done up to that point. But it was good because learning Python, R, Tableau, and solidifying my SQL experience is ultimately what got me, viewed at with Verizon and ultimately Evernorth. So Verizon saw my portfolio; they really liked what I was doing. They brought me in, and it was for a year contract. They brought me in, they gave me a little test, learning like using like Python and something called Jupyter Notebook, which essentially is just it really is just a big code editor in which you can be able to show your results and send it to people. And I guess like from my experience knowing how to use these like programs, they brought me in for a short-term contract. So it was only supposed to be for a year, and unfortunately, we was approaching March 2020 when the thing happened, and that shriveled up. A lot of the work that I had with my clients was like declining. So I was just in this place right now where it's like, okay, you know what? Do I want to continue like my freelancing stuff? Because I do feel like that's like the position I want to be in. What I ultimately really liked with all the work that I was doing was the data analytics work. So it's like, okay, you know what? Since I like being a data analyst, like maybe I should work as one, right? Instead of like providing that as a service. If I'm going to be doing this and basically being a worker that's not getting any benefits, I might as well work at a job and get said benefits, right? So I chose to look for work, and one of the companies that approached me was Express Scripts at the time, but then they converted into Evernorth, which is a Cigna company. So originally I was debating between working at Express Scripts, now Evernorth, and Health and Hospitals. And I guess at that point it's like whichever comes first, whichever seems more appealing. So even though Health and Hospital did offer more money, I did get that as well. I ultimately chose to go with Express Scripts at the time because it seems like, they were really like cutting edge as far as like data science is concerned. It's a bunch of smart people. I felt like this would be good for me to get a type of mentor. This is a space that I want to be in. So I ultimately chose to go into that role. So I started as a contractor, like 88K is how I was starting, for what the value is. So from July 2020, it was supposed to be for a year, and then they review the work that I've done. But, once February 2021 came, they actually wanted to bring me on full time. They liked a lot of the work that I was doing, and they offered me the 100K plus role. And the work that I do there is kind of a mix of what I've been doing this whole entire time. So Python and R, of course, is the main languages I use to get data down, manipulate it, and eventually insert it into SQL databases. And then from there, we build like applications off of it, which really was super helpful that I actually learned the web development before like coming into this field, because traditionally that's not something that a data analyst would do. But it was still really good experience because now I feel like I get to have a mix of still doing web development work, but as a data analyst. But saying all that to say, if I was to give my advice to others to just fast forward this progress, I ultimately feel like learning Python and or R immediately would probably be the best steps. And if you're learning Python specifically, there's a library called Pandas, which, like I explained before, it's kind of like a super version of Excel. So if you could be able to do that, you will be able to transition to the space way quicker than I did. It took me like a couple of years. And with that, I was trying to learn like where I wanted to be as far as the tech space is concerned. But if you want to do this, like learning those two things is pivotal. And with that, you should learn like how to use SQL. So like learning CRUD commands, that's a good step to begin with. But then if you can also learn window commands as well, that Windows functions, that would be extremely helpful. So really, I do feel like with that, and then having a BI software down. So me, I personally use Tableau, but you can use like Looker, Power BI, whatever is out there. You know, you can go on LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter, see what's out there, see like what those buzzwords is as far as the BA software is concerned. They all kind of function the same way, but it's still good just to know one or two or a couple of them. So even though, like I said, web development is not something that you need, I think it's a good plus to have. Like, any, the more technologies you have, the better. It makes your resume pop out a bit more, and also gives you options to like kind of do like some cross work in different departments. So I personally feel like, just learning the basics, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, at least those front-end languages, to know how a page works. And if it helps, just like have like an understanding of how backend works, which you're probably gonna get that from Python one way or another. So yeah, I want to keep making this type of content for people that wants to get into the space, as well as like showcasing like some data analytics and web development work that I'm gonna be just experimenting with. So I guess from there I'm gonna just see what pops. You can let me know if this works for you. Probably not now, but I guess at some point, maybe there or here, like something's gonna show up, and then you can continue looking at stuff, I guess. But yeah, let me know how you feel about this. I'm gonna keep making this type of content. This is the type of content I wish I had at the time, so I'm hoping this works for everyone else. But thank you so much. Enjoy your day, I guess. I just gonna end this somehow. Cool. I don't know, namaste. But yeah.